and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, opinions and perspectives. In the midst of the severe chill, this was another hot week for news, not just in our country but also globally. As always, I have two very special guests to discuss in depth some of those developments. But first, let's check what made news. World's biggest vaccination drive just got underway with Prime Minister Narendra Modi launching the Pan-India rollout at more than 3,000 sites. All through the weeks, aircrafts flew with special cargo of the vaccines to ferry them at various sites in every Indian state and union territory. Meanwhile, after collating information on the 3 crore odd frontline workers, the scheduling has already been done for their inoculation. But that's not all. Half a dozen other countries have also requested India to send them the vaccine to protect their citizens from the COVID pandemic. In a move that is being hotly debated, the Supreme Court stayed the implementation of the 3 farm reform legislations to help break the stalemate. The Apex Court also formed a committee of 4 agriculture economists and experts to engage with the protesting farmers. However, hopes of a solution remain grim as the farmers have completely shunned the committee. Seeing the attitude of the protesting farm unions, one of the experts, Bhupinder Singh Maan of the Bharatiya Kisan Union, has said he is recusing himself from the committee. In a major boost to self-reliance in defense manufacturing, the Cabinet Committee on Security cleared 83 light combat aircraft Tejas for the Indian Air Force. Experts say that improved and updated version of the Tejas would prove to be a game changer and the backbone of the Indian Air Force fighter fleet in the days to come. 10 states have confirmed the incidence of bird flu this week, including the national capital Delhi. Respective governments have closed down poultry markets, cordoned off parks and gardens as a precautionary measure. The government has assured that there is no reason to panic as avian flu in winter is common. At the same time, Delhi has now opened a lot of the things since a lot of the samples were proved to be negative. A huge row has erupted worldwide with the WhatsApp messaging app changing its privacy policy. The policy now allows the messaging app to share its customers' data with the parent company, that is Facebook Inc. In a severe backlash, millions of people said they were migrating to other apps such as Telegram and Signal. Since then, WhatsApp has come out with massive advertisements assuring users that their data is safe. We will discuss this controversy and a lot more on the big tech overreach with our panel in just a few moments. So, after that quick look at some of the major headlines, let's meet my special guest for the evening who will discuss threadbare a couple of those issues which dominated media space through the week. I have here with me a very senior journalist who has a wide experience of the print, electronic and digital media, Siddharth Zarabi. Welcome Siddharth Zarabi to the show. You are an expert on business journalism as well as political economy, and we hope you will be able to shed some very interesting light on today's subjects. I also have with me another special guest. You have seen and heard him on Media Scan earlier, Kartikeya Tanna, who is joining me from the US directly to discuss the issues this evening. Welcome Kartikeya Tanna, and I hope we are going to have a fruitful discussion with Mr. Tanna and Mr. Zarabi. With Twitter suspending permanently the handle of the US sitting president and WhatsApp declaring officially a policy to share the data, the debate on the overreach of big tech giants has now been reignited. Concerns over lack of data privacy and curtailing one set of political views or perhaps amplify and favor another set is not new. From India's parliamentary panels to think tanks abroad and even few street protests, the issue of overreach and unjustified controls has been a concern for quite some time now. However, the recent developments have led to a global wake-up call. Since there are too many aspects of this entire issue. We will like to keep our discussion largely in the Indian context. So, is big tech the new global big daddy? Let's discuss. Siddharth Zarabi, let me come to you first. As you are also a strong voice on the social media platforms, but at the same time, you are aware of the business and the economic issues involved. My straight question to you is, whenever any governments or the administration or such administrative powers, they try to control expression or stop somebody, we call this censorship, and we come out very strongly against it. When a social media app or a messaging app or a technological company tries to suppress somebody's voice, what can we call this? Is this censorship? Is this being careful? Is this preventing law and order situation? How would you define?
Well, very clearly there is an element of selectiveness, and there is also an element of subjectivity in this decision. You know, the timing by itself is surprising, and it's not as if equally provocative statements have not been made in the past in different contexts by Donald Trump. But you know, when you know that a person has lost and is down and out electorally, suddenly this kind of action would raise doubts in the minds of people. The larger issue that I want to mention here quickly is about how do you govern expression in social platforms. You and I are journalists. We have always lived our life as per a code of conduct, and that code of conduct has required us to adhere to certain guidelines, to stipulations, to a situation where we adhere to not just norms but fact checking. On social, that doesn't happen. Who takes the responsibility?
Yes. I have a very short query here, Mr. Zarabi. You know, when governments take to censorship or even trying to control one set of views against another, there are forums and there are platforms and institutions we go to complain. Here we see a different game being played out. When such platforms, which are supposed to be free platforms for expression, they take such a step, what can be the, how do we complain it, and what is the forum at which we raise it?
Well, this is a very good point, and many of our viewers would be aware of the fact that the Government of India and the Ministry of Information and Broadcasting has already begun a process where some sort of oversight is brought into clearly the emerging digital media space, which is going to be the future. And the question that you raise requires that the government should take a very close look at how the content that is published by platforms, and this is very important, these platforms have always in global forums and in other countries taken the stand that they are platforms and they are not published in that sense content creators themselves. They own the platform and they say that people put up their views on their own. Right. However, as we have seen, not just in this instance, but in so many other categories of wrong content, there is now an issue that the Government of India, which is one of the largest markets for social media firms in the world, people don't know that all these platforms, the top 3 or 4 platforms and the top messaging service in the world, count the Indian market as either number 1 or number 2.
Yes, that is correct. And there were comments.
The responsibility is on us as a policy making establishment to come up with an architecture that does not clamp down on people's right to use and expression, but also brings in some amount of sanity, I would say, to this entire process.
Correct. Very, very well put there. And I want to bring in Kartikeya Tanna now into the discussion. Mr. Tanna, you are in the US currently, and I am sure you are more attuned and more updated with the views and the various counter views going on there in the social media platforms, as also in the larger media space. However, I want to carry on from where Mr. Zarabi, what he just raised. you know, these social media platforms, these big tech companies, despite all the market reach and all the consumer space that we provide, they somehow have not been able to come out of that mind frame of treating India and countries like India as a kind of a third world, you know, mindset, treating us with the third world mindset, whereas we provided the biggest markets actually. Now, you being in the USA, what I want to understand from you is, and this is more in the Indian context actually,
Right.
you know, we have been hearing from people of a certain political view or social view in India that their followers are being curtailed constantly, they are being threatened, they are being warned that their accounts may be suspended. Several times their accounts do get suspended, and then there is an entire ecosystem operating, you know, to put the onus on a certain kind of thought, whereas no accountability is desired from the parallel political thought. On that note, I want to know, how do you perceive the entire situation, because you yourself are a very strong social media voice.
Yes. So, you know, something that Siddharth touched on in the last few seconds of what he was saying. You see, the free speech is obviously sacrosanct, but what the government guarantees is way different from what the social media giants guarantee.
Yes.
Because the social media platforms are really private companies. I mean, they're publicly listed, but they're still private companies. They have their own set of rules and regulations. It's not the same as government. But why do they get the protection when someone, let's say a Taliban leader, tweets on their Twitter account, you know, something that
Yes.
is incendiary? They get that protection because they are an intermediary. Intermediary means that they simply provide a platform for people to post their views, to express their views. Now, it could be completely bizarre, which is the whole point of this platform, because then someone else can point out that, you know, this is bizarre and, you know, influence the minds of people. For example, if Donald Trump posts a lie, then
So what
what's
you are
Joe
saying,
Biden and Kamala
allow me
Harris
to
from,
interrupt you.
Yes.
Allow me to interrupt you for the benefit of our viewers, Mr. Tanna. What you are saying is, either it is complete absolute free speech and everybody should be allowed to say what they want, let the consumers take a call, or if they are following certain norms and certain rules, then let that apply to all viewpoints.
I think, Smitaji, you know, so the court jurisprudence in US as well as in India have clearly established, you know, limits to free speech, limits to the exercise
Yes.
of free speech. Those principles, which are rarely applied, should be applied also to Twitter, Facebook, and other platforms. But Twitter cannot start, you know, shadow banning political accounts that don't suit their political narrative.
Which
they
they are.
cannot start in, which obviously it's very obvious that they are doing it. And if that's the case, then, you know, you said it, India is one of the best markets. In fact, I think it's the largest market for these platforms because China has banned most of these social media platforms.
Yes,
so it's
correct.
time that India shows its power and revisits the intermediary guidelines and the protection that these social media platforms get as intermediaries. I think it's time to show them the might of India and the size of its market. I think it's about time that we
Correct.
stop letting them treat us. You know, Jack Dorsey, for example, was summoned before a parliamentary panel, and he just, you know, he just chose
Yes.
not to appear. And I think it's about time we show them that, you know, this is not how it's going to work. And this is not about, you know, some kind of an arbitrary police action. It is actually under the law that if you want to be an intermediary, you better behave like an intermediary rather than an interferer in political views, you know, promoting certain kinds of tweets, shadow banning certain kinds of tweets. So it's about time we show them the strength
Absolutely.
of India and its market.
Yes. And now we have come to, things have come to such a pass that a country like Uganda is trying to give democracy lessons to the US. I mean, somewhere down the line, these big tech companies have a role to play, that things have come to such a pass. However, I want to move on to the next question on the same topic. Along with what happened in the US and the subsequent discussion all over the globe, wherever people are using social media platforms, along with that, simultaneously, a new development has taken place. That is the tweaking in the privacy policy of the WhatsApp Messenger. On that question, I want to ask Mr. Siddharth Zarabi, you also must have read that, you know, people en masse declared they were trying to migrate to other messenger apps, etc. Now that is all fine. My question to you, sir, is what WhatsApp is doing today, there is no guarantee any other platform, Telegram or Signal or any other, would not do it tomorrow. Hence, this question of allowing, promoting and helping Desi apps, you know, developing our own technological market, our own in-house such platforms, do you think that is the ultimate solution, or even that would not help?
Well, you know, I don't know about in-house, you know, by in-house, you are obviously referring to some sort of similar app that is developed within India and is meant only for Indian users. You know,
yes,
closed ecosystems will not work because obviously conversations have to happen with multiple sets of people. And in these apps, especially messaging, we have seen that the winner takes all effect is very, very prevalent. The larger issue about privacy is not just with respect to individual privacy. Smita, the larger issue that again as a country and with respect to our policy towards data security, and I must say that I wish more was done and more had been done on our data security. For example, localization of data. We know that a few years back we made that effort. Unfortunately, many companies did not comply and somehow it got lost on the wayside. The fact is that unless the server is located in the sovereign dominion of India in terms of the legal territory and the applicability of our laws, we will always have this question of extra-territorial jurisdiction and the violation of privacy. And I must also
from
add,
that standpoint, Mr. Zarabi,
signing up.
Allow me, from that standpoint, how do you see the data protection bill that is, you know, being discussed and in the offing?
Sorely lacking. It needs far more teeth. It needs a far more robust architecture, and it needs to understand one fundamental tenet which I believe has not been kept in mind, which is that the sign up on any social media platform or a messaging platform is voluntary. Users are giving these apps access to their entire phone and its content, and that contract between a user and a company which is domiciled or headquartered in some other extraterritorial jurisdiction is not under Indian purview. If you just think of that with a calm mind, you will understand that this debate is a bit spurious. I'll just end with one point.
Yes.
Every day we get newspapers, in India at least, newspapers or even online newspapers. How many ads are there on newspapers? You read the story, you ignore the ad, or if it's your choice, you see the ad.
Yeah.
So just the fact that there will be ads in a service, according to me, should not be a stumbling block. Because how will that service survive? The larger question is the relationship between a user and his rights to seek redressal with regard to his information.
Point
a newspaper
taken.
vendor does not sell your addresses.
So, Mr. Kartikeya Tanna, let me come to you here.
Yes.
What Siddharth Zarabi is saying is that so far the debate has been on very specific issues which do not actually reflect the entirety of the problem, you know. And also the debate may be superficial at one point. This is a much larger subject, and the question of the consumer's relationship with the company. Now we know this question of having servers in some other continent and the private company not coming out with the data because they have their own rights as a business establishment. What do you want to say on this whole question of data? Surely what is happening about WhatsApp today can happen with any other app. And
absolutely,
is happening.
Absolutely. And Smitaji, you know, there's a famous saying which is now almost a cliche, that, you know, if some service is being offered to you for free, then you are the product.
Yes.
So obviously, when users sign up to, you know, things like WhatsApp, Facebook, etc., you know, no one really needs to read the terms and conditions. You know, we just scroll through it, we accept it, and we, you know, start utilizing the service, and it's you know, it's free, so it's obviously enticing, and also the whole world is on WhatsApp in a sense. You know, you have almost 2 billion people on WhatsApp. Many companies make it an official policy to actually be on WhatsApp, to be available on WhatsApp. And there are groups, there are work groups, etc. I think what Mr. Zorabi touched upon is that, this is a blessing in disguise, in a sense, what has happened of late, both with Twitter as well as with WhatsApp. And I think that is that's the cue that the Joint Parliamentary Committee, which is right now discussing the Data Privacy and Protection Bill, must take and ensure that all the interests are balanced and maintained. We don't want to unnecessarily drive away businesses from India. I mean, India is a market. It's good for them, but it's good for us as well. What we need to do is to strike a balance so that our privacy is not violated to an extent, to an inordinate, disproportionate extent, that just benefits these companies. There has to be a middle ground somewhere, and I think this is a good blessing in a sense that this happened right when the discussion is ongoing. And as Mr. Zorabi said, so far it lacks teeth from what we've heard. And I think this is a good opportunity, a good wake-up call in a sense for our parliamentarians who are in that committee to essentially, get control of the situation.
So I think viewers, all of you here will agree, and I certainly do, that whatever has happened over the past few weeks has actually come as a blessing in disguise, because we here in India are going through the issue of data protection. The Parliament is also seized of the matter, and now that these issues have come up, this will provide a good time, a good opportunity to go through all the aspects of the situation and come out with a solution which is balanced. At the same time, it does not unnecessarily infringe anybody's rights, and we can create a balance, because surely going back on the things that we are using today is not an option. On that point, I must move on to the next subject of discussion this evening. Viewers, as they say, the more things change, the more they remain the same. That sadly seems to be the reality of the farmers' protest at the border of the national capital. After weeks of stalemate, the Supreme Court stepped in this week to say that the laws must be stayed for some time, while a court-appointed committee would go into all the issues involved and come out with suggestions for an agreeable situation. That, however, was easier said than done. Soon after the Committee of 4 agriculture experts and agriculture economists was announced, protesting farmers and their unions declared their refusal to join the deliberations. Later in the week, one of the members, Bhupinder Singh Mann, recused himself from the committee, citing the farmer stance as the reason. So, are we now back to square one? And how long can we afford this stalemate, particularly with the farmers threatening to hold a tractors march on Republic Day? Let's see what our guests have to say. Siddharth Zorabi, on the one hand, the farmers are saying they are ready to continue talking with the government. But when the court stepped in, they clearly shunned the committee of the court. Now we have to wait till next week to see what will happen to that committee. The committee has a time-bound assignment and a task given to them. At the same time, we have the Republic Day approaching and the farmers are planning a march. Where do you see this entire thing going?
Well, very clearly, I am one of those who have always believed that there needs to be firm separation between the executive and the judiciary, and we have seen this trend, especially since 2010, of policy interpretations and policy interferences that have happened on the basis of public interest litigations, where clearly the executive was put on the back foot. But in the present context with respect to the farmers and how the committee seems to have run into some sort of trouble at the very outset, I will not question the intent of the court and the honorable judges who have taken this call. I would say that the farmers perhaps need to figure out what is the end game.
Yes.
The end game in terms of ensuring that a law does not get operationalized, that end game has already been achieved by Punjab state government, and in fact Punjab has now for the second time rejected the laws.
Yes.
Agriculture is a state subject. Agriculture does not happen in central Delhi. It happens in states. So that bit has been taken care of. I think there are enough indications that the government has given with regard to minimum support prices And Smita, I suspect, and I'm not saying this on the basis of information, it is a surmise that the question of minimum support price and, providing more safety or assurance around that may be provided in some ways in the upcoming budget, which is just 2 weeks away.
Okay, that is interesting.
The farmers now need to take into account that the government has also more or less conceded whatever it could. The court has stepped in. The laws have been stayed for a few weeks, which actually in some ways means indefinitely, Smita.
Yes.
So I don't see a point, and my heart goes out to all the farmers out in the cold. I think it's just a matter of realization that they are sons of the soil, and we have all grown up eating the food that they produce. I think some sort of...
So you are saying that under the circumstances, taking all aspects into consideration, it's time for them to now relent and take off the call off the protest and think of the larger solution to the problem.
I would go to the extent of saying that even if it has to be a protest, it has to be protest within certain confines.
Right.
Threatening to disrupt the Republic Day would be a very, very tragic thing to do.
That is a complete no. So I have very little time left now with me, so I must come to Kartikeya Tanna here. Mr. Tanna, just to be fair to all the parties involved, it's true that the Supreme Court stepping into in a matter of legislation is actually a very serious trend. However, what the judges have said also makes a point. Their argument was that because the talks were not heading anywhere. Now, the committee appointed by the Supreme Court is also not heading anywhere. Now, are we stuck with a certain situation where solution seems elusive? Or do you think we are at the fag end of the whole controversy?
I think, no, actually, I believe, and this is a hunch, that we are at the fag beginning of this whole issue, because the Supreme Court has really stretched its jurisprudence, its judicial reasoning, its parameters on which it approaches cases in this situation. If you read the Supreme Court order, the reason that they gave for stay on these laws is hurt feelings of the farmer. So it, in a sense, invented a hurt feelings doctrine. And they have gone beyond what we have read in textbooks in law school. I mean, I'm a lawyer. I haven't read this as a basis for stay on the laws. So the Supreme Court has really stretched everything that it can in order to accommodate the farmers, and still the farmers don't want to entertain the thought of a committee. What does that tell you?
It has to come back to the government? The Supreme Court ultimately will not be able to resolve it. Is that what you are saying?
No, I think the Supreme Court will see this, blockage from the farmers, that they just don't want to yield on anything. They don't want a solution. And I have full faith in the Supreme Court that the stretching that they have done so far in terms of its jurisprudence, it will achieve a logical end, at least in terms of judicial finality. And then hopefully the country will see, that the few top heads in these farmer protests are effectively, they don't have the agenda of the farmers at heart, honestly.
Absolutely. So let me just wind up on that note, because I've completely run out of time. The one thing that emerges from our discussion this evening is very clear, that while the Supreme Court's move is, is being written by most of the experts, that it's a case of classic overreach. However, whether it is the platform of the Supreme Court committee or the government dialogue, the end argument remains that the farmers will now have to take a call on their protest. Either they have to scale it down, they have to move away, or they have to look towards a solution, because this maximalist position is not leading anybody anywhere. On that note, viewers, I must wind up the show for this evening because there is really no time left. So let me thank both my guests profusely here, Mr. Siddharth Zarabi, a well-known political economy journalist, and Kartikeya Tanna, strong voice on social media, commentator joining us from the US. Thank you very much, both of you gentlemen, for being here this evening. And with that, viewers, I must say good night for this evening.
Thank you.